A lot of the discussion here is always about the technical dynamics, the way in which systems are being attacked, but we don't often give as much attention perhaps as is necessary to that overlap between physical and virtual. So what we're going to do today is walk through some of that and actually touch on how those two areas might intersect and in what ways somebody who's going to attack a system online might also be willing to do something offline and what those kinds of relationships might mean. We think about the virtual environment as its own animal, but realistically speaking, they could be entirely different. They could have some distinct drivers that are in common. They could have some very distinct differences. And so that's the point of today's talk. So to tell you a little bit about myself, I'm Tom Holt. I'm the first guy on the slide. I'm an associate professor at Michigan State University in the School of Criminal Justice. I do a lot of research on cybercrime and the social dynamics of the internet and how that affects criminal behavior, whether it's hacking, whether it's prostitution, or something else. And so our interest, both Max and I, was in trying to understand a little bit more about what is going on in the context of physical attacks and cyber attacks. I'm just going to jump right into the first slide since a lot of this is relatively introductory anyway. When you think about the historical, at least within the last decade, range of attacks that we've seen, based on real-world conflict spilling over into the virtual environment. The Danish cartoon attacks are an excellent example of this. Posting the image of the prophet with a bomb in his turban leads to mass defacements from a variety of different hacker communities, but with a specific emphasis on the Turkish community. You could go all the way back to the U.S. spy plane that crashed in China in 2001 and sparked that sort of brief hacktivist debate between Chinese attackers and American hackers, defacing one another's websites. Then we have Russia and Estonia. That conflict, which began over the removal of a statue in a cemetery, leads to both boots-on-the-ground kind of conflict and serious denial of service attacks, compromises, spamming, the list goes on. Over the last year, with the Arab Spring, where we've seen mass protests in the street, physical violence that's being taped, that's being posted, that's being reposted, that's organized in part through Facebook or Twitter or other kinds of social media. The intersection of the internet is really critical, and we shouldn't just give short shrift to it. And then over the last few months, with the Anonymous and lulzsec attacks. How many of you have seen a lot about this week with Black Hat and everything else? Probably tons. This is probably old news. But it continuously occurs, and they're getting a lot of press, and they're getting a lot of attention from a variety of different outlets. When you have hacker groups like Anonymous and the lulzsec being discussed on The Daily Show, even though in jest, that really says something about the tenor of what is happening. So what we are interested in trying to understand is why there's this increasing emphasis placed on the cyber environment. The frequency of attacks is increasing, even just anecdotally. There are more resources being targeted in a variety of different ways. They might be simple attacks, they might be more serious. Regardless, it seems as though there is a distinct change in the tenor of the attacks. In addition, just over the last decade, since we have so much connectivity globally, pretty much now the only parts of the world that aren't well connected appears to be sub-Saharan Africa. Otherwise, both at the tips of Africa, there's high-speed connectivity, there's good general ability to access information. As a result, the use of technology as a force multiplier and as a mechanism for civilian actors is increasingly important. And you could argue that it's forcing a shift in both policies at the nation state toward other nations as well as toward prospective citizen attackers. Now, we've got the little Stuxnet picture up here to emphasize that point. Now, Stuxnet, nobody knows quite for sure who created it. There's lots of arguments about where it might have came from and who is responsible. But if nothing else, the fact that this kind of very targeted, weaponized malware that's out there that could be adapted by skilled actors suggests the cat is out of the bag. And how do we deal with it? How do we determine what might occur? When we think about technology in political conflict in general, we've got to look at it both as a mechanism of communication and as an attack vector. For communications, it's perfect. It's excellent for the citizen to use because you've got access to phones, you've got various kinds of connections for the internet, and you can do real-time communications. So getting a group together, having a flash mob, having the ability to organize, come together, and disband quickly is pivotal. These are cheap things to do. How many of you have a cell phone plan, and how many of you carry more than one phone at any point in time? Anybody? Good. I used to have two myself. Carry around a lot of gear, a lot of equipment. How many of you have a tablet PC and a laptop? iPads, whatever? Okay, there we go. The anonymity that's afforded by these devices is also important. You can find a variety of different ways to get online, whether you're using a proxy, whether you are going through Tor, whatever the case might be. You can find ways to access, share information, and get around. The lulzsec Twitter feed is always interesting to read and somewhat unusual. When we think about technology, this is particularly true with the jihad movement, with a variety of different extremist groups, but this point should be emphasized also. Technology gives a voice to the marginalized group. It allows them to control the message and spin it in their own way. So you could think of the camera phone that's directly recording violence on the street and posting it to YouTube or other resources is going to put a message out. The fact that Anonymous and lulzsec can post their own messages and tweak how people take their point of view. Even in the last couple of years, we've seen the jihadi movement directly posting comments, videos, taking questions from the media, and then posting them online. So this is a vehicle to control how you are perceived, or at least how you engage with the broader society. And then from the technological attack vector, it's a great resource. You can damage critical infrastructure, or you can damage reputation by itself. If you think about Arizona being hacked, the InfraGard attack, the HB Gary attacks, all these things provide a mechanism to embarrass, if not cause harm. Some of you might have read a couple of weeks ago on the Wired threat down, the fact that DHS is now concerned about a Stuxnet attack here in the United States, or at least a modification of Stux for some kind of attack. This is not expensive in order to obtain. If you read anything or heard anything about Operation Payback, which was early in 2010 and late 2009, where Anonymous was attacking both the business community and governments, the tool that you downloaded was absolutely free, very easy to use, and it just helped in denial of service. So it's not an expensive type of attack, but it can still be effective. So the anonymity that's provided, the attack capability, this is really, really critical. And as a consequence, we're arguing that this confluence of technology and society as a whole is enabling the development of the civilian cyber warrior, an individual who is both emboldened by all of these resources and sees the attack potential with technology and is using it as a mechanism to go after nation states, private industry, or whatever target they feel is deserving. That doesn't necessarily mean that these are lone wolf actors. They can be. They could be organized based around a philosophy. They could be working in tandem with a nation state, whether with tacit or other approval, or they could be totally opposed to what's going on in their own home country and decide that this is the time to act. Regardless, with the emergence of the cyber warrior, the civilian actor, it's not quite clear what drives this behavior. Why do some go online? And does the individual who's willing to act in a cyber environment have any relationship to what we might view as kind of the traditional protester or the individual who engages in civil disobedience? What's the relationship between these two things? So what I'm going to walk you through today are some findings from research we've been conducting. We've collected a sample of students from a Midwestern university, a large one at that, and we've got a mix of both U.S. citizens and foreign nationals. We're also working with some partners in different countries to develop samples based on their student populations. Right now we've got Italy, Russia, and Taiwan on board, so we're hoping to understand a little bit about different dynamics in different nations and understand what might drive someone in another country. We're still looking for potential collaborators. So if what I go through today sounds interesting and you might have the capability to help us with this research, please let me know. We'd be happy to have you on board. We're really excited about this project. We think it's a very interesting and innovative kind of thing. Our goal is to really get at this phenomenon in depth. So let me take you through what exactly we've set up. We've tried to understand 4 interrelated phenomena. Individuals who are willing to attack a country, specifically their home country, in the physical world, whether they're willing to engage in cyber attacks against their home country, and whether they'd be willing to attack a foreign nation, online or offline. So it creates this kind of 4-celled table. The type of attack, the target of the attack, so a foreign nation or their home country. And in trying to get at these mechanisms, we've had to figure out a way that would get past perhaps national identity or individual biases against other countries. It's hard to survey a population of individuals and get past personal prejudices. So when I walk through a little bit about the foreign country example, I'll show you what I mean. So let me take each one of these in turn. We'll start with the physical attack against the homeland item. Here on the right-hand side of the screen, you will see the percentages for individuals willing to engage in certain kinds of attacks. We provided a scenario. Imagine that the country that you most closely associate with your home country or homeland, given the population of students we had are from a variety of different places, we wanted to make sure that we didn't specify a certain locale. Instead, what country are you from and where do you associate as your home country? Pretend that they've recently promoted national policies and taken physical actions that have had negative consequences to your home country. It's caused hardships for the people in your home country. What would you do in order to take action against your home country in these policies? Choose as many as you want, and within the scenario, assume you have the skills necessary to complete the act. So you can get the training, you can get the resources, whatever it is. How far would you be willing to go in support of your beliefs? As we go down the column in terms of severity, it's do nothing. A fair amount of people said I'd do nothing. Write a letter, so 70% almost said this. Participate in a protest at your country's home capital. Confront one of your senior government officials about their policies. You still have a fair proportion of people who do that. Sneak into a military base to write slogans on buildings or vehicles. A relatively small proportion here agreed with that. Physically damage an electrical power substation in your country, less than 2%, and then damage a government building in your home country with an explosive device. So we only had 3 say that. So kind of a good news, bad news thing. Not too many are willing to go to extreme lengths. On the bad news side, you really only need 1 or 2 people who are willing to go to this length to actually cause